Two things are going to come out of this podcast. One, we're going to be canceled, and two, we're probably going to get divorced from our wives.
So fucking inappropriate. So fucking inappropriate.
It's like crying, just jerking it on the hole. Like, what the fuck? Jerking it on the hole. Jerking it on the hole.
So fucking inappropriate.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's time again for that top 10 list you don't give a fuck about by two guys you really don't give a fuck about.
Welcome back. We are here recording another episode, and this one, as we said previously, is close to Matthew's heart, and it's the top 10 stand-up comedians of all time.
The hardest list I've put together so far. Probably will be one of the hardest lists I'll ever put together.
I mean, it makes sense. My boss, Mark, he listens to podcasts, and he requested us do top 10 comedians. We took it as top 10 stand-up because I think it's differentiate stand-up and just other forms of comedy. Like TV shows, movies, that kind of comedy are different than stand-up comedy.
I mean, yeah, because you have stand-up comedy. There's even in that realm, you have improv comedy, which would include things like Saturday Night Live,
Yep.
Mad TV, just normal improv groups. Then you have people that mainly just do comedy, like in comedy films, which would include people like Jack Black, things like that, which, all
Whole
are
different list.
All are incredible in their own right. But yes, I stuck strictly with stand-up comedians at that point, just because I think all the other, comedy films, improv groups, I think it all stems off of the original stand-up comedians. That kind of branches through. I mean, you gotta think about the decades, and I mean, that this has been done. And the decades of people that have shaped what we know as comedy now.
You say that, and I'm smiling because my list is going to, as you know,
His list is going to include the last 7 years
it's
of
more.
stand-up comedians.
It's more. It's not because I don't. It's not because I don't like stand-up, because I do. I love stand-up. I like Netflix. I'm always watching stand-up specials, and if I can go to the Funny Bone or any other places, I love to go to stand-up shows. It's just these ones I've watched, and they keep me laughing and hold my attention longer than, for say, an Eddie Murphy. I'll spoiler alert: Eddie Murphy is not on my list. It's probably on comedians' list, like yourself. You're a stand-up comedian, so Eddie Murphy, I'm not going to be shocked if it's on your list. And other people that I don't have on mine, but I was never drawn to Eddie Murphy like I have been to some of the people that are on my list. So our lists are going to differ. Before we get into it, I do want to throw out something we don't normally do, some honorable mentions, because I revised this list probably 5-6 times, and these people, I was like, fuck, I can't put them on my 10.
How do you leave these people off?
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
And these people probably aren't even people that you would say is difficult to leave off your top 10, but they are for me. So in no particular order: Fortune Feimster, Anthony Jeselnik, Jay Farrow, Ron Funches, and Eddie Izzard.
Oh, Eddie Izzard, yeah.
I had them all on my list, and then I thought of other people. I was like, fuck. So I had to drop them down, and eventually they just fell off the list entirely. So I'm throwing them out as an honorable mention because I feel they deserve a spot on my list somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, even honorable mentions are really hard. And I can say one name off an honorable mention list. You'd be like, how did that not make the list? But Cat Williams did not end up making my top 10 list. And I struggled so hard not getting him on there. But there's guys like Cat Williams, Corey Holcomb. There's so many. Good Lord, I could go for days on. Eddie Murphy would be in the honorable mentions for sure.
Okay.
I mean, even guys like Charlie Murphy, who did a lot on Chappelle's show. Darnell Williams. There's so many different comedians that I could honorable mention: Jerry Seinfeld, Drew Carey, Billy Garnett. I mean, there's so many stand-up comedians I could put on this.
Yeah, I knew
Jim
there definitely
Brewer
would be for you.
would be honorable mention for me. I mean, so when I make this list, I look at, I don't know, either guys who stand out because they either made huge strides in pushing the business forward, or guys who a lot of their comedy routines are either A, breaking stereotypes down, or B, ignoring them altogether to the point that it's just about comedy and fun. And there's a lot of comedy in like playing off stereotypes, because that's obviously funny. And that's obviously something that everyone needs to address. I think every comedian addresses it at some point in time in their careers. And a lot of comedians make a career off of stereotypes. But if you can play into it to a certain degree, and I say that because one comedian I believe does it better than anyone else. But there is guys who have either been able to overcome more odds to stay on stage than other guys, and there's guys who have contributed to the art of stand-up comedy more than I think people realize. And this is kind of where my list kind of plays out, except for number one. Number one I just think is the GOAT of all time, which is also an Ohio boy. But at the same point, like, can I go back and rewatch these guys over and over and over? And everyone on my list, I can go back and rewatch over and over and over.
Okay,
and
so
that's a big thing for me.
Okay, I'm glad you said that, because that's kind of how I determine mine. I'm like, okay, can I watch all their stand-up, like every special they have, everything, and can I go back and watch it, and go back and watch it? And everyone on this list, I think I honestly could. And
yeah, it's like, could I pop in a CD of their stand-up special and
still laugh 10 years later after it comes, still laugh at the joke that I heard 10 years ago.
Still laugh,
exactly,
you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done road trips listening to like one comedian's, CD over and over. I can name the album I bought by them, and it was funny every time, I knew what the joke was. I knew where the punchline was. It still cracked me up, like, and
just like anything artistic, it's subjective. So our lists are going to be different, but how likely do you think that we're going to have 5 of the same comedians, not in the same place, just on the same list?
Not at all.
0. Okay, I agree. What about 3?
I want to say maybe 1 or 2.
You think 1 or 2?
Maybe 1 or 2 tops.
I think
there's probably going to be some I'm just going to absolutely flat out disagree that you have on your list.
That's what I was going to. I think we might have 1, and I think probably at least 8 of them you're going to be like, why the fuck is that on your list? But that's my list. So
there might be a few you're going, who is that and why is it on the list? Like I mean, probably not who is that, because I know we've had similar conversations at work about this exact topic.
Yep.
And similar conversations on, who, that's the thing about comedy. Everybody finds something just a little bit different funny. And the great mark of a comedian is to be able to hit all those marks for a crowd so everybody has a good time, right? Like, did the people have a good time, Personally, I think one of the funniest guys ever, who I don't think was a stand-up comedian, was Arsenio Hall. Like, if you remember Arsenio Hall's TV show, all he wanted to do was, did the crowd have a good time? And it was iconic for what he did. But he was also in Coming to America with Eddie Murphy, a classic comedic film, right? Where he played a classic comedic role. I mean, Arsenio Hall, but would I call him a comedian? No. Would I call him an entertainer, a presenter?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think he is light years in front of what he was doing at the time he did it.
Yeah.
He was just concerned, did the people have a good time? I think that's the mark of any good entertainer, any good comedian. Is like, can you go up there, can you tell a story, can you get a chuckle, can you get a laugh? You're not going to get a belly drop roll laugh every joke you do. Can you break the monotony for them at some point? And that's really kind of how comedy plays out. They're not all going to hit, they're not all going to fall. But can people walk away and go, yeah, that was a good time?
Yeah. Well, my number 10 is one of the ones that I think you're probably like, why the fuck is that on your list? But it harkens back to also nostalgia, kind of. my grandmother. I was really close to my grandma. She loved this man. And it's Fluffy. Gabriel Iglesias is my number 10. And I know we've talked about this before. Some of his stuff is kind of like repetitive. But I really feel like a lot of comedy is kind of just rehash and that kind of thing. So Gabriel Iglesias, number 10.
But he does break down stereotypes and just clown them all day long.
Yes.
And I can point to 3 bits he does that I still laugh to this day.
Okay.
Like, he actually has re-listenability for me.
Okay. All right.
I don't care who you are. You're not laughing your ass off at the racist gift basket. You can kiss my ass. That's one of the funniest fucking things I've ever heard in my life. And he actually is on my top 10 list. So I don't really think that's really that big of a deal. A little bit higher than what you have him at number 10.
Wow.
But I don't really have a problem with Gabriel Iglesias. Like, I think he's actually pushing. He has more depth to him than I think people realize, because he does tell stories about, one, his blended family, his stepson, and him trying to be a dad there, and what he kind of goes through there. I think if it came down to best comedians that did family type stories, I could do so many different top 10 lists in this, just in stand-up comedy alone. Because a guy I really struggled not putting on here was Bert Kreischer and also Bill Burr. These are 2 guys who are doing things most other comedians won't do. Like, Bill Burr has no problems just fucking crushing you on stage just to say he did it in a rude, almost rude manner. You know what? Fuck it. I actually get what he does. I think it's funny. A lot of people find him offensive, though, to a certain degree. But if you're not being offensive in comedy, you're probably not getting the point.
Right.
You're not probably being funny enough to certain aspects and in certain degrees. But my number 10, and this goes back, this guy started doing comedy, I believe, in the late 1920s, 1930s. He has one of the longest running comedy careers, I could say. This guy was on television, radio, stand-up. I think he took stereotypes and paved the way for a lot of comedians today. That's Jack Benny.
Okay.
Jack Benny is and they're if you can go back and listen to the old Jack Benny shows, he still has jokes from the early 30s, 40s, World War II, the whole era that he worked through, that are still funny today. You can still laugh. It's still good stuff. Jack Benny is what I would consider to be one of the godfathers of comedy, hands down.
That is a perfect example of what I was saying. You know the history behind comedy and comedians, and you can go back as far as that and still have that on your top 10. Whereas me, I know who that is. I know the name. Can't say I've ever heard a joke by him. Maybe that's to my detriment, but
now you'll find Jack Benny on people's comedy list even today. You're going to have to get like a top 50 or a top 100 list for Jack Benny to appear on it. He's not going to appear on very many people's top 10s. But even all these years later, Jack Benny ended up, he was one of the first guys that essentially he had a cast of people with him, especially on the Jack Benny show. He was one of the first comedians that welcomed a lot of black comedians into what he did, where they weren't kind of doing their own thing, where he incorporated them into his comedy sketches, his comedy bits. But every person on his show was the opposite stereotype of who they really were. So Jack Benny was a comedian who founded many charities, gave money to charities. One of the most generous comedians and celebrities of his day. His character was the stingiest, won't spend a penny person ever. Now, he had a butler named Rochester, who was played by a black man at the time. And he was the house servant, so he was playing off the stereotype of that day.
Right.
But he basically bullied Jack Benny all the time, so he's kind of one of those things. Don Wilson was a bodybuilder. They portrayed him as a 400-pound fat guy, lazy, did nothing. Phil Harris, which people may or may not know that name. Phil Harris went on to voice Baloo the bear in Disney's Jungle Book. He was the voice of the Albatross and the Rescuers. He did a lot of voiceover work for Disney and other animated features of the day. And Phil Harris was one of the guys who helped advance AA for people who had alcohol issues, but he played a drunk on the show. I mean, another kid on the show, his name was Dennis, incredibly intelligent. He had a master's degree from Harvard. He actually died in World War II. He went in and became an aviation pilot and got shot down over, I believe it was Germany. He was portrayed as the most ignorant thing that walked the face of the earth. So everybody had opposite, and it really went really, really well. And it really
Sounds very
played
intriguing.
into, there's so many.
And this was all done as a stand-up act, or this was done as like a TV
So
series?
once this was a radio show.
Okay.
This wasn't on TV. I mean,
Like Howard
it did
Stern
eventually
type
get to radio. So think of SNL if it was on the radio at that point. He had
Okay.
his cast of people, and there was a storyline and sound effects and everything else.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It's like there was a bit where he told Phil he was going to fire him. He goes, "I can't. No, you can't fire me." He goes, "Well, you drink too much." He goes, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "You drink too much." He goes, "Well, that's all you portray me as is just one drunk. You need me here drunk." And he goes, "What was yesterday?" He goes, "Friday." He goes, "Did we record yesterday?" He goes, "No." He goes, "Then why did I see you staggering out of a bar laying in the gutter?" Rehearsal. So these are the things he would put together, and these are like he had a lot of sarcasm, a lot of banter, a lot of back and forth, and I realize I dryly put that out there, but the banter between them and how it's delivered, it is hilarious. It's very funny. Like he's very well known even to this day for a bit called "Your Money or Your Life," and that's still referenced in certain aspects. It's been referenced several times in movies. It's been referenced in other comedy bits. But he started the "Your Money or Your Life" bit from Jack Benny. It's almost as iconic as "Who's on First" from Abbott and Costello.
Yeah.
So,
All right. I'm intrigued. It seems like every podcast, top 10, you say at least one thing. I'm like, damn, I need to go look into this now. So that might be the one for this one. My number 9, I battled with this individual and one other, and the other got knocked off because I think the other ones, I won't say his name, you already have. It's kind of cliche, a little too cliche, if that makes sense. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Number 9 for me is Eddie Griffin. Not to say that the person that I was talking about, I left off the list, Cat Williams. I was between Cat Williams and Eddie Griffin, and ultimately I put Eddie Griffin on because breaking the norms, I guess is what you said. I feel like he did that more than Cat. Cat almost played into it too much to me. I still find Cat fucking hilarious. Should probably be on this list. But when it came down to those two, I was like, okay, sorry, Cat, Eddie Griffin it is.
you know, I think for one, I think we're going to end up surprising each other on how many we have on here. I do have Eddie on mine.
Holy
Once
shit!
Again, a little bit higher.
That's 2.
I actually one of the crowning comedy experiences I was able to go to was in a very small. You've been to Bricky's where I've done performance. Okay, so where I went and saw Eddie was probably about the same size room as Bricky's. So it was a very intimate, small setting. It was a place called Joker's. I actually got to go see Eddie. I took my girlfriend at the time, and he absolutely just ripped into us. We were like 2 of 3 white people in that room.
Oh, of course.
And it was absolutely like the most hilarious experience of my life. I loved it. I loved every aspect of that show. Now, his openers didn't really mess with us too much. They kind of looked at us and grinned. They were like, oh, Eddie's going to destroy these motherfuckers when he gets out. And he absolutely did. And my girlfriend got so embarrassed and was like sinking in her seat at the time. And that just gave him the license to just keep going. Because, like, the one thing, if you ever go to a comedy show and they start needling you a little bit, don't really let them know it irks you because they're not going to stop because it's going to get a lot funnier for everyone around you. And she played into it, and he started ripping on me, and I started laughing and like, yeah, no, but then tell her what the fuck, you know. And it was really cool though because like you know, at the end of the night, at the end of the stand-up, you know, he thanked us for coming, he thanked us for being good sports. Like Eddie was a professional in every aspect of the word. Like he didn't get overly rude about it, but he did have to crack those last few jokes at us, and I respect him for it. Yeah. Absolutely, like so glad I got to experience him coming through Dayton, Ohio, and this was after he was making movies and everything else, and
Oh,
still
wow.
came to a small club
Hell yeah.
and still got that experience. I've seen Cat Williams in an arena, and once again, another one of those experiences I'm really glad I had. But at the same point in time, I value that smaller venue. And I understand why Cat does the arenas. I get it. Like,
Yeah.
you're going to make your money there, absolutely. But there was something very cool. I was the second table off the stage that night. I paid extra money for my tickets that night.
You're asking for hurting.
Yeah, I was probably about 9 feet from Eddie the whole
Oh,
night.
that's awesome.
And so it was, absolutely an amazing experience for me. And Eddie actually, yes, I've seen Eddie. Eddie makes my list without a doubt. But you're right. Eddie has a way of being naturally funny without having to create a situation to be funny in. And he's just how you've seen some of the ways he acts on screen and some of those tics he has on screen in his movies. It's just him. That's just who he is. Dude's funny as shit. And live, hands down, I would see him any day ever live. I own some of his stand-up acts, on DVD, which, date myself. But absolutely, dude's just incredibly funny no matter how you look at it. He deserves, I think he definitely deserves to be on that list, because my number 9 actually is Gabriel Iglesias.
All right.
So that's not, we've already talked about why he's he would be on my list and what he's done in the field, but he's another one of those guys I think is just naturally funny. He doesn't necessarily have to go to any one particular type to be funny. The man's just naturally funny. He has no problems cracking on himself, which I think any comedian that can crack on themselves a little bit can really start to make a crowd comfortable. If you can laugh at yourself, the crowd can laugh at you,
Right.
and you can get a lot better reactions out of the crowd. Now, do I think Gabriel's the best at that? No, John Panette was the king. But Gabriel is in that realm. He can make any crowd, whether it's a small venue or an arena, he can pull every crowd to him pretty quickly.
All right. Yeah, I thought you were going to give me grief for him being on the list, and he's above on your list. That's crazy.
All of these guys, all of these comedians, if you know them, if you've watched a special either on Netflix or anywhere else, they've had an experience of success. Because if you think about it, really before Netflix has really done a lot to bring stand-up comedy specials to the forefront.
Oh, yeah.
Because before Netflix, what did you have?
HBO, right? Didn't they do?
You had HBO, you had Live at the Apollo, which I think was on HBO.
Yeah, probably.
And you had Comedy Central. And
Oh,
Comedy Central, it used to be if you got an hour-long special on Comedy Central, you made it.
Yeah.
You made it. But here's the thing. Even before Comedy Central, there was a gatekeeper to people who got success in that comedy industry. And it was one man. And if he liked you, your career blew up. He's why guys like Robin Williams, Roseanne Barr, all these people made it to where they made it.
And who's this
Like
one?
Chris Rock and these guys who, it was Johnny Carson.
I don't say it was a Johnny Carson.
Johnny Carson, you had to fight and struggle and everything to get on a Johnny Carson show. and if you came out and you did your stand-up bit, great. But if he didn't ask you to come over on the couch, you weren't getting booked. If Johnny thought you were funny, and Johnny asked you to come over to the couch, and he talked to you for a little bit, your career was about ready to skyrocket.
That's wild.
Like, Johnny Carson was kind of the gatekeeper of that time. And then, at the end of Carson's career, before I think Letterman took over, was it Letterman took over Johnny Carson?
Letterman or Leno, I don't know.
One of those two. Leno was a stand-up comedian as well, which is why Leno did so good in that. And I thought Leno did a lot better in that market than other people because Leno was a stand-up comedian. Now, so was David Letterman, but I don't think Letterman was known for any stand-up comedy prior really to, getting on the David Letterman show.
All late night talk show, it always starts with a monologue. So they all have
Right.
some bit of stand-up act.
Honestly, I guess you could say we're paying kind of a homage to David Letterman because we're sitting here doing top 10 lists. And what was Letterman known for? Letterman did his
true.
top 10 list, right?
Yeah.
And, that's really what Letterman was good at. And I mean, let's face it. He had Eminem reading top 10 lists at one time, and the dude was good at what he did. The dude was great at what he did, and Letterman was able to advance his career and do a lot in that time span. But yeah, I mean, it was either Comedy Central or anything else, and Netflix started giving these people who weren't going to make it on Comedy Central an avenue. Might have just been because they were trying to find cheaper comedians, but these guys have blown up.
Yeah.
Now Netflix is kind of dominated by a couple different comedians, but at the same point in time, you got guys like Matt Rife starting to come up and get specials on Netflix. You've got guys like, Tom Segura, who wasn't getting Comedy Central hour-long episodes and wasn't getting, this other stuff, and now he's got Netflix special after Netflix special. There's a lot there's a lot that's opened up in the streaming, and now other streaming services are starting to pick up comedians. There's a lot more avenues out there. It's still a narrow field, but there's a lot more avenues out there for people to get comedy out there, because now you have TikTok, YouTube, Lemonade, you've got all these other social media platforms where people can actually start going, oh, there's more out there than just the 30 big names we know.
Right. But you kind of touched on it a little bit when you're talking about Gabriel. Self-deprecation is something that I think is funny. Like, if you're able to pick on yourself and get a laugh out of it, I think that's...
Oh, without a doubt, dude. You need to look up and listen to John Panette. I mean, rest his soul, he's no longer with us.
What is his name?
John Panette.
Panette?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And dude is just absolutely hilarious. 90% of his jokes are on himself. Just beyond funny, dude. Beyond funny. Like, he's a big guy. He talks about going to the doctor, and they're like, you have a gluten intolerance. Well, that's cool. I don't eat gluten at all. I've never went to the store and bought it once. No, it's in pasta and bread. He goes, well, the gluten's what makes everything taste good. And just this whole bit. I don't care if I shit my brains out. I'm having a sandwich. I mean, it's just, it's the guy just like so many stories about himself. It's absolutely hilarious.
Oh, that's another one I'll have to look into then. All right. Well, the reason I bring up the self-deprecation is because my number 8 is Brad Williams. If you don't know if you're not familiar with Brad Williams,
wow.
He is...
That's another guy I really wanted to put on this list.
What's the appropriate term now for... Because I don't...
Dude, it's Brad Williams. He's a midget. Like, he has no qualms about that shit. Fuck it. Like, I think he's technically a dwarf. But...
Little person? What's the politically...
Brad just don't give a shit. Like,
well, I understand he doesn't,
I think it's little people now. I think to that point.
Well, Brad Williams is what he just said, and most of his act is him picking on himself for being little. But he is fucking hilarious. I seen him on the very first Jericho cruise. He had him on there, and it was...
That's so awesome. Dude.
It was amazing, and I've been a fan of him ever since.
Awesome. Brad Williams is very naturally funny. Like, I would hang with Brad, I don't know, like any day of the week. I think he would be so cool just to see and hang out with, without a doubt.
I agree. And let someone fucking make fun of him for being little. I'm going to fuck him up.
Oh, dude, he is so... He does not take anything too seriously. And I love that about the guy, right? Like, it's like, so the fuck what? I'm small. Who gives a shit? Like, he will literally put that as your hang up, not his.
Yep.
And I love that. He doesn't care if he's been called a midget, a dwarf, or this or that or whatever. And, like, yes, there are things that's going to irritate him here and there. We all have that, right? There's just those bad days, those off days where, especially when he's like, some dude in a mall brought his kid up and told him he worked for Santa. He's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, he didn't even clue me in. He told the kid he was getting everything for Christmas. Like, this is a guy who can take whatever and just play off of it. Like, I absolutely, when he was 16, his dad bought him a big wheels for fucking a car and shit. He's like, watch, see if I didn't ride that shit to school. Like, I just see him doing it anyway, right? Like,
My favorite bit of his is the public restroom urinal.
Oh God, yeah.
The little one is for him.
There's one for Timmy and him.
If you're 6 foot tall, get the fuck out of my urinal. Yeah.
Like, it's just, without a doubt, man, I think it's absolutely fun. The dude's just hilarious. And yeah, absolutely. He's so good at what he does. He really is so good at what he does. Which that brings me to number 8. Don't really have to say much more about this guy either, because my number 8 is Eddie Griffin.
Wow.
So,
all right.
Pretty much we'd be on par for 10 and 9 if I hadn't had Jack Benny on there that started it all for everybody, I think. But yeah. I mean, we've covered Eddie. Just phenomenal man, phenomenal human being, great comedian. So.
All right. Well.
And here's probably where it's going to go off the rails.
maybe. I don't know. Before it goes off the rails, let's go ahead and do a Marry, Fuck, Kill, though. And we're going to take the 2 that we both have on our list, except for I'm going to modify it a little bit. So, female version of Eddie Griffin, female version of Gabriel Iglesias.
Oh, Lord.
And then I'm going to throw in female version of Brad Williams. They still look pretty much the way they look, just maybe longer hair and boobs.
Oh, dear God. That just reminds me of the Gabriel Iglesias bit at Splash Mountain. If you know it, you know it. If you don't, I don't have time to go into it.
There's pictures involved. That's all you
Oh
know.
my God, dude. That point, I'm probably fucking Brad Williams. Just knock the midget thing off the bucket list. Let's I mean, yeah. Call me stupid, racist, weird, whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I would not pass up the opportunity to sleep with a midget.
Plus perfect height for a blowjob. I mean, that's...
It's like one size. Let's go.
There's that Valley Girl voice again.
I'm going to slip you a Snickers. So, at that point, oh, God.
So
Probably
female fluffy?
the kill the Gabriel Iglesias one and marry Eddie Griffin.
Okay. Any reasoning? Like,
Um,
because Eddie Griffin's funnier than Fluffy? Is it?
I mean, if we're going off of the fact that they're females, I've never been with a black chick, but I mean,
Okay.
I don't know. There's not a win-win in this one for me at all. But then I've never been with a Latina, so I'm losing out either way. But I know I'm not missing out on the chance to be with a midget.
Okay.
God, that's terrible.
Well, here, I'll make it worse. I'm shallow as fuck, so unfortunately, no matter how funny Fluffy is, I'm killing Gabriel Iglesias because he's too big for me. And then I'm also on that same boat. I think I'd fuck female Brad Williams.
Shaming bitch.
Bigger, Bigger. That's going to be a recurring thing now.
Yep, that's going to be the new dragon in the room.
But not bigger Brad Williams. He's much littler. So I'm going to fuck him, and then I will marry the female version of Eddie Griffin. Yes, Griffin. So, all right. We are on number 7, right?
The next one wasn't on the list. That would be so weird.
It would be.
To a degree.
It would be really weird because I'm about to glaze. I'm about to glaze a lot, actually. But another thing, I am a loyal person to my circle. People that I friends with, care about, however you want to put it. When I am their friend or family, however you want to put it, I am loyal to them. And I couldn't leave this person off the list because I support him 1,000%. And that is you, Matthew Neff. You are my number 7 top 10.
Damn, dude.
Yes, you beat out some people, but I'm being honest.
That is not, I should not be on anyone's top 10.
Well, you are on mine. And it's
Unless it's a wall of shame.
No, you're on mine because, if one, you're funny. I wouldn't have put you on this if you weren't funny because I wouldn't be able to support you. I'd be like, I'm sorry. But And two, because I support you, and I've said it before, you will get a Netflix special at some point in time. And when you do, just remember that I had you number 7 on my top 10 list when you were starting.
Wow, man,
So you are my number 7. I glazed the shit out of you, and that's why I said it would be weird if you were part of this Marry Fuck Kill scenario. What's yours?
Wow, that's incredible, man.
I mean that with all sincerity.
I feel pretty honored on that. Just the fact that I would make a list with even the 8 through 10 guys you have on there. That's pretty that's pretty incredible, dude. I appreciate that. I don't really deserve that, but thank you. My number 7 is Andrew Dice Clay. When you look at everything, that guy was probably 20 years before his time. Honestly, like today, he'd probably be fine doing what he does. But without a doubt, I can listen to that man degrade everything under the sun for till the end of time. I always thought he was excruciatingly funny. Yes, he was excruciatingly raunchy. Yeah. He is excruciatingly inappropriate. But he was very funny, and I would not. I wouldn't trade what he added to comedy. He pushed limits, and it all stemmed off a bit he used to do when he first started out, because that's a persona that he has on stage, and a lot of people don't realize that he used to push this bit where he would come out with the big thick black rimmed glasses. You know, he wrapped the tape in the center of it, and he had on like a lab coat, and he was like a scientist doing studies and everything else, and he would drink this this dye-colored water on stage, and he'd take the glasses off, the scientist coat off, and he turned it kind of like one of those greasers from, like the old movies, right? And that's when that whole persona took over. That whole player persona, this, that, and the other, and really kind of built his whole career. So instead of opening every show with that act, he just came out as the Dice Man, right? And it's just really kind of crazy to see how some of these bits evolve, how some of these bits come around. And Andrew Dice Clay was one of those guys who could take something as absolutely stupid as Mother Goose nursery rhymes and make them as filthy as he could possibly make them, and as funny as they possibly were.
Yeah.
And he built a career on that. He built a career of innocent nursery rhymes that he turned into a sexual nightmare for some people. But Andrew Dice Clay, man.
Okay.
Have you heard Dice?
Oh, yes. I
Okay.
100% knew who you're talking about. Does not make my list, but I agree. I always thought he was funny. I think maybe for me, he might have crossed the line a little bit too much, which is weird coming from me saying that. Not that... Just, I think it was like too much sometimes. I'm like, okay, I can't listen.
He was
to
very
this
over the
anymore.
top. He was. Like I said, he actually got banned from
bits
doing
and
comedy
pieces.
in the U.S. for the longest time, right?
Yeah.
Like, he was not allowed to take stage again. Like, I think he's one of the few comedians that U.S.
That's crazy.
Like, yeah,
That's
like you guys, no more for you.
But I thought he was funny. I just bits and pieces. I think I could only handle him for so long.
Yeah.
I mean, but maybe I probably have better tolerance now. If I would rewatch some of his stuff, I probably could.
You got to be in more of a. He's kind of more of a situational mood, but the fact that he took that line, quote unquote, line in the sand of here's where comedy is, he just stepped over it and kept going.
Yeah.
He just kept pushing it to a whole different level. Kind of, I think, opened up for the freedom for guys later down the line. Like another would be honorable mention for me, Ralphie May, to be able to do what they did, to be able to push it the way they were able to push it. And we got guys like Ralphie May because of what, in my opinion, Dice Clay was able to do. So.
I smirked when you said that, because my number 6, God rest his soul, Ralphie May.
Yeah.
He is on my list, and
dude, Ralphie holds such a special place, kind of in my heart, a little ways, because I used to watch when Jay Moore hosted Last Comic Standing on Comedy Central. It was kind of like the American Idol version for comedians. You called in, you voted, you this, you that.
Right.
I never called in to a single show and cast a vote. I'm not the guy who's going to watch those shows and call in and vote. This is bullshit. I just, whatever. Let the rest of these fuckers do this. I'm just going to enjoy it for what it is. That was the only season I called every fucking week. I called every fucking week and voted for Ralphie May. And the guys on that season with him, you had Corey Holcomb, I think, was on that same. And I think Corey's an amazing comedian. He didn't get the fame that the other guys did, but he was an amazing comedian. There was a few other people on there that I thought were really damn funny. But Ralphie had a presence. Ralphie was just that big guy you kind of almost felt sorry for until he opened his mouth. Then you were like, oh my God, this guy is awesome. And he's the only comedian that made me go, at the end of the show, where's my phone? I'm going to vote to push him through the next level. I've got to see this guy for another week. It's not that I didn't enjoy like all the other comedians on there.
Yeah.
I did not want him to go home. He was the only comedian that made me do the whole fucking pick the phone up, America votes type shit. And I was part of the America that voted that year on the Last Comic Standing because I loved that guy so much. And I've seen every comedy special he's put out. I have YouTubed hours of this guy. This guy is absolutely, he's a star. He was a star.
And with all that said, you don't have him on your top 10.
I do not have him on my top 10.
That is how serious this
It's
is.
so, like I said, give me a top 50, and like most of these guys,
You're probably still going to struggle with top 50.
I probably still would struggle with top 50.
All right.
And I think he perfected what other guys do. Like he perfected him and was able to perfect so everyone would accept what Clay was doing. Because let's be honest, dude. Like, Ralphie May is the only person I know that can talk about going to a gay wedding and talking about dick sizes with his kid, and you're not like, this is the most disgusting story I've ever heard, right? Like, you're not gonna have anyone tell a story about pushing your kid in a stroller that reaches up and grabs some girl's cooter, and you not be like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing or something. Like, no, he tells it, and it's like, you wish you were there. You wish your kid was grabbing Poo-Tang at a mall at some point. But it started with Clay, and that's why Clay made the list over Ralphie. Because if it would have started with Ralphie, he'd have been on that list. And like I said, this is why this list was so hard. I want all these guys on there. But unfortunately, I kind of go with some of what I would consider the original innovators of what he does.
Our list is a lot closer than what I expected. Like, people that I left off, whatever. It's crazy how close we actually are. So, all right, what is your number 6?
My number 6 is a guy who had a very short comedy career. I think if he would have went much longer in his comedy career, he probably would have been right behind Clay getting banned. This was a guy who was a former Southern Baptist preacher. This is a guy who ended up dying in a car accident on his way to a show. And this was a guy who had literally no qualms about saying what he had to say and how he had to say it. And he was kind of a screamer, so a lot of your Southern Baptist preachers at the time, they had what was called scream preaching and hiccup preaching. And this guy kind of took some of that to the stage with him. And he did such a 180 from the preaching. And it was a lot of highly sexualized content, a lot of divorce content, a lot of going to hell type content. But hands down, he is still remembered as one of the most influential comedians of the day and as one of the most standout guys of comedy. And that is Sam Kinison.
Okay. I didn't know he died on the way to an act.
Yeah, he was driving out to California for a show. And he had a bad drug issue, and he ran off the road, or I think he ran off the road, or was he hit? I don't remember, but he was not really doing so well, and he did not make it.
Well, R.I.P. Ralphie May and Sam Kinison then. All right.
It's sad how many dead comedians I have on this list.
Yeah. After we're done with the list, I have a question for you. So before we sign off, please remind me to ask you the question that I have. I want to wait till the end though. All right. So top 5. We are
in the top 5.
so far. We've had 2 that we agreed on, and one that you said should have been honorable mention. Let's see how many top 5 we have together. I think this is the one that I was like, okay, I bet he's probably going to have this. And it's Dave Chappelle. He is,
He
is my
I don't
number.
agree where you put him,
Well, I figured that much.
but yes.
But Dave Chappelle is number 5.
Dave Chappelle is. Oh man, I'm not going to say much about Dave Chappelle right now. But Dave, in my opinion, has been wildly successful at everything he's touched. That being said, if this ever reaches Dave, would you please the fuck open Wiley's back up?
Yeah.
For those of you who know what I'm talking about, for those of you who do not, because I do know this podcast goes a lot of different places. Wiley's Comedy Club is a place in Dayton, Ohio, and it's where Dave Chappelle did a lot of his early stand-up work. It was one of the longest running comedy clubs in Ohio. It ran for 42 years. I actually got the amazing, absolute privilege to be at the very last open mic show they held open. So I got to stand on the stage that guys like Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock and George Carlin and Jeff Foxworthy, Drew Carey, stood before me. It was a very humbling experience, but it was also one of the probably most fun experiences I've ever had. It was a very comfortable feeling standing on a stage where I knew so many people who went on to do so many great things in their life, ended up being and standing at one point. And Wiley's was iconic. And unfortunately, it did close down after 42 years. And then we found out that Dave Chappelle bought the building it was in. So,
Well, his company bought it.
well, yes, one of his companies bought the building it was in. So I'm really, really, really hoping that there's something good and in store there. I'm kind of hoping that Dave Chappelle manages to reopen something comedy related there, hopefully. And he's not just buying the building because that's where he got to start.
Yep.
But
He also has because he lives in Yellow Springs, Ohio, he also has a comedy club in Yellow Springs. So Dave, if you are listening to this, you could also book my boy Matthew at your comedy club. Make it on a Saturday and Sunday, though, so that I can fucking go see it. All you people that have comedy shows during the week, motherfuckers got to work, all right? Anyways.
he works second shift, so it kind of really fucks up the whole go out thing. Dude, Dave Chappelle that's 3. That is 3. That is 3 we've got in common. So Dave Chappelle is there's not a whole lot I can say bad about Dave Chappelle.
No.
He is. So number 5 in my in my stand up for number 5, I think has been beyond wildly successful. Rest in peace. We lost him years ago. Whether it was on the mic, whether it was in films, he's still in a little known film that I think was some of his best work, that I think was some of his funniest stuff. And he was in a film that was produced by Kevin Smith called Jersey Girl, where he plays the father to Ben Affleck and has a granddaughter. It's a different side of this comedian, but he's still extremely funny in what he does. And this comedian has been on every probably major. He's had countless hour-long specials on Comedy Central. He has sat on the couch with Johnny Carson. This guy has sold out arenas, and he has sold out intimate clubs, and he did both all the way up till he quit. Or should I say died. But this is George Carlin. George Carlin is one of those naturally funny guys that also made you think about current events in a different way. Made you see things for sometimes what they were. Made you see them for just as stupid as they were. But George Carlin is definitely my top 5. Best comedians, man.
You know all of that about him, but you did not know that he had a TV series called George Carlin's
I
show.
had no idea.
And I
he had a
brought that
TV
to your
series
attention.
about George Carlin. I'm like, what the fuck?
That's
yeah,
hilarious.
Yeah, I had no idea there was a George Carlin show. Which I can only imagine was probably funny as shit.
Oh, it was. I remember watching it. It was.
I mean, Carlin's just naturally hilarious. Yeah. Like, that's a guy who's just can take any situation anywhere and just make it funny, regardless. Like, he did a great job at that, and Lewis Black was another one who did a great job of that. I always kind of thought they were in the same vein. And Lewis Black is getting another honorable mention because he's not on the list, but Lewis Black's persona was the angry comedian, and it was hilarious. It was funny, and he just ripped on everything all the time. So,
all right. Before we get into my top 4, Marry, Fuck, Kill time. Let's go ahead and keep it with throw the ball.
Number 7's not going on the list.
Throw the ball in your court. You give us a Marry, Fuck, Kill. It doesn't have to stick with the list, or it can. Go for it.
So let's go with controversial female comedians.
Okay.
So we're gonna go with Roseanne Barr.
Okay.
We'll go with. God, I'm trying to remember her name. She's a shit comedian, but everybody kinda. There's a lot of controversy. She has some people that absolutely love her, but most people consider her a garbage comedian.
Hope I don't have her on my list.
I've got to.
He's looking her up right now, guys.
Well, I'm trying to figure out. Amy Schumer. That's what I was trying to think
Okay.
of. Yeah, fuck Amy. Jesus Christ.
Show me a picture of her. I know who it is, but I can't remember what she looks like.
Comeback. Anyway, Amy Schumer.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Why I couldn't remember her name, I don't know why. And the other one we will go with will be Sarah Silverman.
Okay. Show me a picture of her. Oh, I thought you had it.
Oh, Sarah?
Yeah. Again, I know who she is. I know
Sarah Silverman.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yep. If you haven't heard Sarah Silverman do the Aristocrats joke, then you don't know how. Oh my God, holy shit. Anyway, go ahead.
Who was the first one? It was Amy Schumer, Sarah Silverman, and who was the first?
Roseanne Barr.
Roseanne Barr.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can mentally slap me if you want. Roseanne Barr is the person that played Roseanne. That's not Rosie O'Donnell, right? Okay.
No.
I always get
Roseanne
confused.
Barr
Okay.
played.
So Roseanne Barr.
She wrote and starred in the show. Well, I
Okay.
didn't really write. She fought the writers and did a lot of rewrites.
Okay.
But yeah, she was one of the first female comedians Carson actually had on the couch. That's how good she was.
I wonder if he actually had her on the couch.
Maybe.
So, while I did find her funny, wasn't my cup of tea, but I still thought she was kind of funny. I'm going the shallow route again. I'm fucking her because she's too big for me.
Are you killing her?
Oh, that's what. Oh God, yes, that's what I meant. I'm killing her. Sorry, I was thinking about who I was going to fuck.
He almost took one for the team.
I'm killing Roseanne because I'm too shallow. I am going to fuck Amy Schumer. I don't find her funny. I'm not a fan of hers. But she's not unattractive, so I would fuck her. And then I would marry Sarah Silverman because out of the 3, she probably is the funniest.
Yeah. And she's probably the least controversial of those 3, to be honest. But she has had her fair share of quote-unquote drama here and there, but I love Sarah Silverman, man. So yes, I'm probably going to marry Sarah. We're going to kill Amy Schumer because I am about doing public service work here every once in a while, and I don't how she got where she got. I don't know, but it is what it is. And you know, I'm not
sucking some guys off.
I'm not yeah, right. There's gonna be Lisa Lampanelli, but yeah, I'm not that shallow. I'll have fun with Roseanne. Why not?
Okay. All right.
I mean, I'm not exactly a thin guy myself, so I'll I'll make them patty cakes.
All right, so my number 4 is yet another a little person, I'm not sure what your opinion is on him. I think we've talked about him before, so you may be frustrated that he's on my list, and probably frustrated he's so high. But I've got Kevin Hart as number 4. Okay, that's what I thought. Listen, man. Every time I see him on screen or I see him do a stand-up, I'm laughing the whole time, and that's why he's so high on my list.
And this is the difference in what people find funny. I'm not taking anything away from his success. The man has been wildly successful in what he's done, and he has had a couple specials that I did find funny. What was it called? Big Little Man? Is that what it was? One of his specials or something like that.
I can't remember the title of it, but it's something with little, of course.
Yeah, and he has certain bits that I do find, generally pretty funny. But I've never been like, oh God, I need to sit down and watch Kevin Hart again. Like, the most thing I know Kevin Hart for now is his DraftKings freaking commercials. Because as far as that goes,
Those are on a lot.
But Kevin Hart is funny in his own right. He definitely not going to make my list or anywhere close to that high of that list.
Okay.
But I understand why people find him funny. I understand why people go to his shows. He is very expressionistic when he talks, as far as how he talks. Like he's got that head movement, and his voice really he has really perfected the way the voice kind of rises and falls, and how he portrays his lines and what he does. The man is good at his craft. I don't find him as funny as other people do, but that doesn't mean shit. That man's selling out arenas, making movies, and doing everything he does, right? He's been in 3 movies with The Rock, so I mean, dude's definitely doing better than me.
You'll be there one day.
He's just not in my, I guess, forte of comedians up there.
That's what I said.
And I don't mean any ill will toward the guy.
Is it subjective or objective? It's objective.
Yeah, absolutely.
I said subjective in the beginning, so it's objective. Comedy is objective.
If someone came to me tomorrow and went, "Hey, I got an extra Kevin Hart ticket. You want to go?" I'd be like, "Fuck yeah!" I will never pass up an opportunity to go see a comedian perform their craft.
Gotcha.
Is it going to be the guy I go out of the way to buy a ticket for? No.
Okay.
But would not pass up an opportunity to see the guy live. I do think he does have some funny stuff, and there is a big difference in live comedy and watching something that's been taped, in my opinion. When you go to a live comedy event, there's a different atmosphere.
Absolutely.
You're in a different vein of this is going to be great, And I think Kevin Hart thrives in that kind of scenario as well. And I understand why he sells out arenas, and I understand why people find him as funny as they do. But yeah, he's not gonna make my top 10. He would definitely be in a top probably 25.
Okay.
But he's not gonna make that top 10 cut for me.
Before you give your next one, have you seen the special that he did with Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle?
It's on my list, but I have not watched that yet.
You gotta watch it.
Because that really kind of struck me in the vein of the original Kings of Comedy video and stuff like that. And these are 3 guys that I would really, I think would probably play off each other really, really well. And I think would really, really do well. And 2 of those 3, I have nothing but exuberant amounts of adoration for. But no, I haven't seen that one yet. I'm kind of ashamed I haven't seen that one yet. You know the truth?
It's definitely worth going out of your way to see.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Give us your number 4.
So my number 4, oddly enough, is Chris Rock. Let's be real. The Chris Rock show that he ended up doing for a while, or what was it? No, it wasn't the Chris Rock show. It was Everybody Hates Chris.
Yeah, I was like,
Everybody Hates Chris. Yes. Still, it just kind of showed how he can write and the humor of what he does and how he puts it out there. But Chris Rock, so I really started delving into comedy at 19. 19 was a very different age for me. It was when I was able to, right after I had left the occult and was on my own, and I started actually experiencing things, and stand-up comedy was something that I ended up kind of delving into. And what it was is I was at Best Buy, and I was picking up an album of music. I went in there specifically to buy an SR-71 album. And I walked past the very small comedy section they had in that store. Most of your comedy CDs were very, very small sections in stores, even when they carried them. And this gold lettered album, for some reason, stood out. And I think it was on sale at the time because I think it definitely was one of his older albums at the time. I think I picked it up for like under $10 or something. But it was Bigger and Blacker by Chris Rock. And that was really the first like introduction to Chris Rock I'd ever heard. And it was hilarious. I loved that album. I probably listened. I don't know if you could wear a CD out, but I think I definitely probably put 400 to 500 plays on that CD easily. And he kind of really launched me into what else is out there. I eventually got cable and started watching a lot of Comedy Central, because at the time Comedy Central just wasn't bullshit shows, but they did a lot of blocks of stand-up comedians, and I really started getting into.
I almost said this earlier. That's back when Comedy Central was comedy,
right,
like stand-up and stuff, and music television was music videos.
Right.
Somewhere we got off that.
Somewhere it really went off kilter, because I remember. You had other shows where people were animating comedy bits, like it was a show called Shorties Watching Shorties. And, that's when I started hearing about guys like Mitch Hedberg, Patrice O'Neill. Just phenomenal guys that I never knew anything about, that I really started getting into and listening to. And yeah, so like Chris Rock was kind of one of those gateway comedians for me in the beginning. Now, I had heard guys like Jeff Foxworthy before, and a few guys like that, and they're funny in their own right as well. And they didn't make my top 10 list, but at one point in time, I really liked Bill Engvall, and out of that blue collar comedy group, Bill Engvall was the guy I liked the most. And I had enough respect for for what all four of those guys did. But yeah, it was probably Ron White and Bill Engvall were the two guys I probably liked out of it the most. Like, I didn't have any real issues with Jeff Foxworthy's comedy. The problem is I knew people like what he was talking about, so I was like, ugh. But Jeff made a great career for himself too. But Chris Rock was the one that really kind of opened the door of, comedy can be edgy too.
Yeah.
Comedy can be a little raunchy too, and it can still be funny, And I think Chris probably went through a phase where he wasn't appreciated as much as he probably should have been. But yeah, Chris in my book he is funny.
He 100% is, and I left him off of this list not because he's not a funny stand-up, but I find his movies and that stuff funnier than I find watching his stand-up. So that's why I left him off my list. But
I think the first movie I saw with Chris Rock in it was Down to Earth, and oh my God, the concept of that film and what he did in it, absolutely hilarious. Yeah. But yeah, he's a very naturally funny guy, and he does film about as well as, he brings to film kind of what like Eddie Griffin brings to film. Like there is just a natural. They both do it in their own right in a little bit different ways, but the effect is the same.
Yeah.
So.
But where I feel is I like Chris Rock's movies and stuff better than his stand-up. I like Eddie Griffin's stand-up better than I do his movies. But I still like his movies.
Right.
But that's how I determine who was on this list.
Undercover Brother I kind of do without, but The New Guy and a few things like that is absolutely... Yeah, Undercover Brother just felt like an hour and a half stereotypical freaking holy shit.
Yeah.
But, you did get to watch Denise Richards make out with another chick, so...
Which brings us to our top 3. And mine, you have to know, is going to be on the list. You probably didn't know where she was going to fall. All I got to say is she, and I'm sure you know who it is. I've said before, once you do get that Netflix special, to remember to introduce me to her, and that would be Nikki Glaser. I absolutely think that everything she does is hilarious. The roast of Tom Brady, that was obviously like peak right now. Everyone knows about her because of it.
Right.
But prior to that, I loved all of her stand-up. She plays on the slut thing where, and I absolutely love that. I think
There's times I think she plays it too hard.
Maybe, but I think that's what draws me to her and also makes me find her extremely attractive. So
But I will agree with you.
Nikki Glaser, number 3.
When it comes to the roast of Tom Brady, dude, she was on point that night. Like, she was really kind of she did a really good job with that roast. I
Just remember, when you open for Nikki, bring me backstage, please.
Which I'm not gonna lie. When we got the number 7, you're like, I'm glazing here. I'm like, oh god, it's Nikki Glaser here. And I'm like, oh shit, I don't know if I just got a weird fucking verbal money shot or a compliment. I seriously like thought, and I'm sitting there going, that's Nikki Glaser. Like, really? That's that far down? So anyway, because I'm not gonna lie, I was like, I gotta wait for her to pop up. She's got to be on this somewhere.
Well, she's my number 3.
Number 3, man. My number 3 is also a comedian that's passed. I think he's done.
But you said also a comedian that passed. You mean another comedian? Because Nikki
comedian.
Glaser hasn't passed,
no,
has she?
No, I don't. No.
My heart stopped for a second.
Yeah, we almost had Nate considering necrophilia for a second. Because we both know. Can you warm her up, please? Well, I'll take care of the rest. The only one knows popping Nikki Glaser in the oven at 350 for 45 minutes. Wow.
I'm not saying I'm against it.
Nikki ever hears this, we roast the ones we love. You can be mad at me. I'm sorry. I don't. I just say shit when it comes through, and at this point, just take a joke, bitch. I don't know what to
Wow.
I'm sure that if she wanted to fire back, she could fucking probably bury me essentially with her experience. But you know what? All I can say is, Nikki, I've seen so much of your stand-up. It's a joke, not a dick. Don't take it so hard. But God bless her. She's kind of a sleeper comedian in a way. If you know her, you know her. If you don't, you don't. And she's got her success in her own right. So. Number 3 for me, I think, really opened up black comedy at a time where it wasn't overly popular. He was able to break down certain barriers. Now, he's been the brunt of a lot of jokes. He's had his own fair share of drama, but he was also very funny. I have absolutely one of my top 10 favorite comedic films of all time he's in. It's him and Gene Wilder that play in it. I'm referring to none other than Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor is another one of those guys who I think was, he liked to push some of those boundaries in what he could say and what he could do, but he wasn't afraid to just push through and get that laugh. Like, he wasn't going to like hold off on something because he felt like this might be cross the line. He's like, I know this is funny in the end, so he's going to push that. And I'll be honest, what him and Gene Wilder could do in movies like See No Evil, Hear No Evil is absolutely just, to this day, it's just funny as shit. And this is a movie that came out, I think, in, 70s? But, oh my God, like, there is good classic comedy doesn't die. And you know if it's good comedy when it's funny 20, 30 years later. Because if it's funny, it's going to be funny. And that's why I don't really go with a lot of situational comics, because if I have to explain to you Bill Clinton got his dick sucked in the White House and that's why this is funny, and they have no idea who that is, 20 years, 30 years down the line. Hell, kids nowadays don't know who that is and what happened there. Now, there was a lot of great jokes during that time that was hilarious, but it didn't really play off. The only kind of like things that really kind of came around full circle on that is Robin Williams used to fucking bust Joe Biden's chops when he was I believe, a senator, about how no one could understand what he was saying. I mean, that kind of did come back around when he became president because that became relevant again. But how often is that going to really work out in a situational stance like that? But, I mean, and I just use that as an example because it's one of the examples I can think of. And, you know, kind of lucky even after, you know, Robin Williams died, God rest his soul, all his bits coming back about Joe Biden definitely resurfaced during the presidency because people were like, wow, this has been, you know, forecasted. But, I mean, let's be honest. If it was funny in the 70s and it was really funny, it's going to be funny in 2025. And Richard Pryor just kind of has some of that lasting impact, I think, on the comic market. And there's a lot of comedians that, you know, he influenced them and what they do and how they do it. You know, he was one of those iconic guys that comedians looked up to. And that says a lot if you get to a status like that.
I do not have Richard Pryor on my list. If it was a top 10 most influential, he would probably be 1 or 2. But his comedy itself, I just haven't watched enough of to say I'm a fan of Richard Pryor. I know who Richard Pryor is. I've heard some of his bits, but I've never. That's again a detriment to myself by not watching it. But I guess I like the newer stuff. I don't know. Which brings me to number 2. Not on your list, probably not on many people's lists, but he's my number 2 because, again, all of his stand-up specials that I've watched, and he also had a Netflix show, Aziz Ansari.
Why did I have a feeling it was going to be him?
Indian American. I love everything that he does. I never watched the Community. I think was the show that he was on before he like kind of broke out.
I think
into
so.
Stand-up.
Yeah.
I've never actually watched that, so I probably should watch it.
I haven't either.
His stand-up,
I randomly watched a stand-up by him one day,
Yeah.
and then I agree with you. He's funny. Yeah. He has some funny stuff, and
his voice adds to it too.
Yes,
the way he speaks. Yeah,
his voice adds to his delivery in a way that's unique.
Yeah,
and he will tell you a story. He does have a lot of storytelling bits, which I like. I'm a big fan of the storytelling bits. Mm-hmm. But he's telling it as almost if he wasn't there and he doesn't believe what he's telling you at the same time. That's a unique skill, man. Like, it really is kind of a unique skill that he puts out there. And, yeah, I agree. He's funny. I don't know if I would have put him number 2.
That's what I said.
But
a lot of people probably like, well, who? Or
he would definitely probably make a top 50 list for me. Just the guy is just naturally a funny guy. I don't know an extreme amount about him. I haven't watched an extreme amount of his work. I do know he sells out arenas when he did. But yeah, Aziz Ansari, he is a naturally kind of giftedly funny guy, and I definitely think that's a kind of a plus.
Master of None. That's his TV series. There's 2 seasons.
Oh, okay.
I think 2 seasons. It's really good. But his family is involved in it, and just a lot of his stand-up is also, he talks about his mom and dad because they're Indian, and yeah. So
when it comes to number 2, this is a comedian that never got any real respect. And most people know him for chasing golf balls and gophers. And I'm talking about Rodney Dangerfield, man. Like, you want to talk about self-deprecating guy? when you can tell a joke about calling a taxi, which I guess today would be an Uber, and you get in and you tell the driver, "Take me where the action is," and he drives you back to your house. Because his wife's a whore. I mean, come on, dude. And he built an entire comedy career around, I just don't get no respect, you know? And this is a guy who not only didn't take himself seriously, but a guy people would discredit because of his looks. And he took that and he played into it, and that man became wildly famous. And that man, just ended up bringing a style of comedy out that I think opened a whole world for other comics to be okay with that style of comedy. Like, yes, have there been more guys who make jokes about themselves and been famous? Like I say, I always will say John Panette was kind of the king because it's just special after special of this stuff, and he's very funny at it. But I do agree that it started with, I think it really opened up and started with Rodney Dangerfield. Like, and, of course you have Caddyshack films. You have, Caddyshack is probably what he's most known for, but he's been in a plethora of films. And Rodney's just naturally, once again, just naturally, I can put Rodney's comedy on now and just still laugh my ass off. Because why? It fits no matter what area you're in. Because he kind of applies that basic human want and need. Doesn't matter what year it is, doesn't matter what the technology is, we all still have those basic human desires, and that's what he just makes it funny. It's just Rodney. I mean, you can't really go wrong with a Rodney Dangerfield album.
Fair. Every time I know who Rodney Dangerfield is, but every time I hear his name, for some reason I think about the dad on King of Queens. I know they're not the same.
Stiller.
I know they're not the same person, but for some reason I hear Rodney Dangerfield, I go to him. So
yeah. Nowhere close.
Yeah, I know. All right, my number one. You mentioned him earlier. It wasn't on your list, but this is a man that I randomly discovered because of Netflix. I was just looking for something funny. I wanted to watch something funny, and I saw this image of this individual. I was like, all right, I'm going to watch this. And then I went down a rabbit hole of finding everything I could find from him, because when I say that I laugh from start to end, I have tears in my eyes for most of this. There's only one person that's ever had that effect on me, and it's Bert Kreischer. I don't really have a reason why, because he may not even be funny, but I love the man. To me, I laugh like I said, I laugh every second he is on a fucking stage, screen, whatever. Maybe it's because he has a shirt off. I don't know, but I love Bert Kreischer. So Bert Kreischer is my number one top 10 comedian of all time.
Bert has created a unique show. And Bert, and what I tell people about Bert is that midlife crisis guy that forgot that he wasn't a frat boy, right? Like I love Bert Kreischer though, dude. Yeah. For me, like my first opening to Bert Kreischer was The Machine, right? Like I think that's where a lot of people jump in on Bert, because you see it all over like YouTube, and you look up Bert Kreischer, one of the first things that comes up is The Machine. Great story, by the way. And you're right, funny. Him taking his shirt off and on stage, like, fuck this, I mean, yes, like that's just that whole kind of. His show reminds me of a comedic, a stand-up comedy version of an old show called Blue Mountain State. If you've ever seen that show, it was about a college football team, frat boy style. The craziest shit possible ever is what's happening. Like they're getting busted for open containers of beer, so they butt chug all the beer type shit. Like it's the whole show is just, you're going, God, this is going to go so wrong. And that's kind of how I'm sitting there watching this comedy. Like, this is all going to go so wrong. It's going to be funny. Like, right? Like, and now in a lot of his later stand-up comedy where he talks about his kids and his family, that's absolutely beyond hilarious to me. When he talks about his daughter Isla and a few things like that. Like, that is the shit that I think is hilarious. Like, you're right. I have laughed at this guy, I don't know, for hours on end. This guy is genuinely funny. I mean, the fact that he just cracks up with his kid and he's like, what's the safe word for pickup? And it's motherfucker. And he sends someone else to pick him up and she's literally making this person say motherfucker in a pickup line at school. That's classically hilarious in my book. I can't get really any really qualm on this guy, right? Like, the podcast he does, Two Bears, One Cave. It's him and Tom Segura. I think that's how you say his name, Tom Segura. Yeah. They have a podcast. Those guys are super funny together, just playing off each other and stuff. And like, he is really funny in most situations that you set him in. But him and Tom kind of playing off each other and doing what they do, really is funny. Like it's absolutely hilarious. The guy he has definitely built an entire act on stage that works. And I'm not sure any other comedian can pull that off. How he does it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like he definitely found something unique.
Mm-hmm.
I have not seen the movie The Machine. I want to. Why I haven't really just sat down and watched it. I have no idea. But yeah, the dude is genuinely funny, man. Like I can't say a whole lot off or wrong about that guy. So,
Have you seen the video that he made of Post Malone's Wow video? Oh my God. So him and Segura had like a battle thing, because they're friends or whatever. They had a battle going on. But Kreischer dropped a video. He got trained dancing and everything
okay.
for Post Malone's Wow. Like, I'm going to have to show it to you after we're done recording. Again, from the beginning to the fucking end, I'm just laughing and tears come to my eyes because it's fucking hilarious. Segura's video of whatever he did wasn't quite as funny to me. I don't really find him as funny as Kreischer, but he's still funny. But yes, that's the last thing I want to say about Kreischer was I got to show you that video. So.
Yeah, that was your chart topper?
Yep, Bert.
Jeez. So, all right, down to that was your shark jump, man.
That was my what?
That was your shark jump.
Shark jump?
Shark.
Shark jump.
You know the term jumping the shark.
I don't. Please enlighten me.
Oh my God. Dude, okay. So, we're just gonna change it up. We're jumping the dragon now. We're not jumping the shark.
Yeah.
All right. So it came from Happy Days with Fonzie, right? Mm-hmm. And there's that episode where Fonzie jumps over the shark on I think it was either skis or something like that, right? And the show was never the same after that. They couldn't top that episode. So,
see, I always thought jumping the shark was like in reference to like you did something before you were supposed to. That's why it went several seasons afterwards. So technically, yes. Okay.
The show peaked before it was supposed to. It never really got.
Okay.
They never were able. They were never able to top that episode again.
Well, then yes, I knew what it meant.
So the term of jumping the shark, So this is the one where,
Bert's your shark. You have to.
So Bert's the shark. I have probably been called lewd many times, but not publicly lewd. I'll probably keep clothes on during any stand-up future. Because the only way I could really top that would be to take the pants off.
I was getting ready to say, maybe that's your thing.
It's not a good day if I decide to go commando. You're like, you are about ready to get disgusted. Get those tearaway pants. And yeah. People be like, whoa, $1 from everyone right now. I'll put them back on. I mean, in a sold-out arena, that's a lot of money just to put pants on. I'm just saying. you have Rodney Carrington come out, put your clothes back on. Leave me alone. Anyway, yeah, that's another one I struggle not putting on the list. Rodney Carrington, dude. That's another funny guy. All right, number one. Number one. This is my hometown boy. Somebody that just stays funny for all the years he's done it. And that's my boy Dave Chappelle, man. Dave Chappelle is, in my opinion, one of the GOATs of comedy. I can't really say there's an all-time GOAT of comedy because I think that's an unfair statement. But I do think Dave Chappelle is one of the GOATs of comedy, man. Which is why when you're talking about that special between him, Chris Rock, and obviously Kevin Hart, who ran that first. Wasn't that a Netflix roast of Tom Brady?
Yeah.
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 Because he hosted that, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And I honestly thought Kevin Hart did phenomenal roasting at hosting that. Like, I love the fact he went out in the crowd and was talking to guys like Dana White and other people that were there. But yeah, dude, like to me, that's pretty much a trifecta of almost a must see. You know, especially with guys like Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock on that. You know, obviously, it speaks volumes of Kevin Hart to get on stage with these two guys, that he's gotten to that point, right? That he's at that level. And, you know, but Dave Chappelle, I can't think of one Dave Chappelle bit or special or even the Dave Chappelle show that I didn't find absolutely hilarious. You know, like this is kind of like for me, like what you do, you know, like what you said with Bert.
Mhm.
Over and over, no matter what, I've gone down rabbit holes looking for, you know, Dave Chappelle stuff that I didn't know existed, you know. And it annoys me that he has an outdoor venue that he doesn't allow anyone to film in. No cell phones. You can't take your cell phone in that venue. Nothing. And I know why he does it.
Mhm.
He does it because he wants his comedians to say and do what they want to do. No repercussions. And they can't film it. They can't put it on the internet. They can't be canceled later, even though Dave Chappelle's begging to be canceled again because he just keeps making more and more money every time they do.
Yeah.
But he also knows what the negative, you know, repercussions of that is. And this is a guy who quit Chappelle's show at the height of Chappelle's show, at the height of Chappelle's popularity on the show, because he wasn't willing to sacrifice and do what people wanted him to do. He's like, that's not funny. That's not, you know, this is a guy who stuck to what he knew and he knew would work. And when it became an impasse, he walked away from millions of dollars, and in return kept making millions of dollars. Now, I mean, is it as steady and reliable as what's coming in with something like Comedy Central's Chappelle's show? No. And Comedy Central did what Comedy Central did. They went and found two other comedians to make a show along the same vein, which was never as good as Chappelle's show, but it's still funny in their own right.
Yeah.
But dude, I mean, Chappelle has been, I mean, he got David Letterman to go to freaking Yellow Springs, Ohio, for Christ's sakes. When that was the only time he allowed filming in there, because it was for Letterman's Netflix show. And he allowed the crew to come in, and they realized that, you know, this is going to be filmed, it's going on Netflix. So, but when he has comedians to his outdoor amphitheater, there's no filming in there. It is pure, unfiltered comedy. This is what Dave's known for. This is what Dave does. Like, you're not going to get, I don't think you're going to get any pure form of comedy in certain aspects. He's an artist and he loves what he does, and he's just damn good at it. So yeah, if I can't really say there would ever be a true singular GOAT of comedy. There's definitely probably a few Mount Rushmores of comedy.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, man, I honestly think two solid picks. Like Bert Kreischer was a struggle not to get on my list, because he does a lot of great stuff. So I can't knock your number one choice.
Yeah. Nor will I knock yours. He's my 5, but
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know. I'm putting it low. Like, that's if that's not just, you know, proof that Chappelle, I'm a huge fan. He's open wide. I want to stand on the stage again.
we had 3 that were. Yeah, that's super surprised me that we had 3. So.
Honestly, I didn't think it would be that close. I think we probably had more in the honorable mention phase of who we liked than we probably had on the actual top 10 list, but it's surprising we got 3 on there.
Yeah. Oh, when you do watch that special with Kevin Hart, Chris Rock, and Dave Chappelle, I'm not going to give a spoiler, but Kevin and Chris feel the same way about Chappelle as you do. You have to see at the very end of the movie what I'm referring to, but it's, yeah.
I mean,
So you're not on that island by yourself.
Chappelle is highly respected in his field,
Yeah.
and I think for good reason.
Oh yeah.
You know, he's one of those guys who didn't forget where he came from. Hell, he still lives where he came from, and he's one of those guys who just there is a difference when you see comedians that are doing it for the money and comedians that do it because they love it and they really like what they're doing. And if it happens to be successful, so be it. Because I honestly believe that if Dave Chappelle was working in a factory somewhere, he'd still be hitting open mics this day, just because he loved doing it, you know. And there's a big difference in guys who love comedy, and I believe everyone on my list and even your list are guys who just truly love doing comedy, and they just happen to find success at doing it. But these guys are doing it because it's something they really love to do. So,
I think that's in any aspect, whether it's comedy or singing or wrestling or whatever it is, sports. If you actually love what you're doing, you're probably going to excel and succeed far past the ones that are doing it just for other reasons. That's how I feel. But that is not a very good way to end the podcast. But what is a good way to end the podcast is with a marry, fuck, kill. I don't have one prepped, though, because I was listening to your spiel about Dave Chappelle. Do you have any, or should I try to think of something? Because I'm going Walt Disney if it's.
Let's go Walt Disney. Let's ride the Mickey dick.
Okay. Well, we're not going to get into animals. We're going to just stick with princesses.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I am going to go with the most probably known Cinderella, and then I'm going to say Jasmine from Aladdin, and then Rapunzel. So Cinderella, Jasmine, Cinderella. Wait, damn it. Cinderella, Jasmine, and what's the long... Rapunzel. I'm sorry, I don't watch these movies, so I vaguely don't even know who they are.
He used to worry about which one's going to grab his Moscato. That was terrible.
I was playing a game with my family the other day, and we had to name princesses or some shit. I thought Snow White and Aurora were the same princess. Yeah, well, yeah. Apparently, people who watch the shit know. I just thought that Snow White's real name was Aurora, and I don't know. So I don't know shit about this.
I grew up with two daughters, so I know Aurora is Sleeping Beauty and Snow White is Snow White. And like I said, growing up with two daughters, I know more about shit I should not know about when it comes to
growing up with two daughters. You mean growing up with two sisters?
No, I had three sisters, but having two daughters and watching them grow up and sitting there while they watch TV and everything else, like
I didn't know that.
I know more than any grown man should know about shit like My Little Pony and shit like that, because it's just like that was just shit that just played on loop for you know, them growing up and doing what they did. And I knew more Disney princesses and all that.
Well, fine. Cinderella, Rapunzel, I almost couldn't remember it again, and Jasmine. There we go.
I'm gonna have to kill Rapunzel. Any man that has been in bed with a girl with mildly long hair, the last thing you want to hear is, "Oh my God, you're on my hair, get off!" And that's going to be a constant with that woman. As much as I like long hair, that's too long. No. Because you don't want to. Yeah, you don't want to be getting intimate with that and wake up the next morning strung up in a web from the ceilings because shit happened overnight. I don't fucking know. Guess you can say that's shallow, but they're fictitious bitches, people. I'm gonna fuck Snow White. She's supposedly
Nope.
fairest of
Cinderella. Remember?
Oh, Cinderella.
See?
Yeah.
Ha! It's not just me mixing them up.
So, yeah, we'll fuck Cinderella. She's going to be okay. Someone's going to come around with a slipper and take her off somewhere else. And, that's Mary and Jasmine at that point. Because that's a sultan's daughter. And she was more than willing to get it on with a street urchin, so she can overlook status. I mean, she don't mind showing some skin. She's got a nice rack. Let's go. Yeah.
Okay. We are 100%.
It's just shallow all the way across. I'm not even gonna lie, but
we are 100% in line right there.
Bitch slap Jafar and break his little fucking scepter and...
I am going to kill Rapunzel because, as was mentioned before, I don't like hair. Hair on the head is one thing, but I'm assuming she probably has just as much hair down there, and I don't want to deal with that shit. So we're killing.
Oh, that's probably dreadlock down there.
Yeah, gross. Literally vomit in my mouth. Fuck that. She is dying for sure. And just because, I'm going to cut all her hair first. Why was she locked up in a tower? Is she a princess? Like, you knowing this stuff more than I do, why was she locked up? Because she had long hair.
I don't remember.
Okay, so it's irrelevant. Rapunzel dies.
I think her parents thought she died and somebody took her and locked her up to take the kingdom. Or I don't know. It's Disney.
And then I am going to fuck Cinderella for the same reason as you said. She is going to have some dude come knock on the door and try on a slipper, and then he's going to whisk her away. So I'll just have the one fun night with her when she loses her slipper. And then I've always thought that Jasmine was hot as shit. So I am going to marry Jasmine, and Aladdin can have the genie, and he can find another princess because Jasmine's mine. So that's pretty good.
Well, I mean, depending on what you're talking about, Jasmine might have Christina Aguilera. She was a genie in a bottle at one point. So
That's a fair fucking argument too.
He'll be all right.
That's a good way to end it.
Oh, you had a question?
Well, you kind of already answered it.
Uh-oh.
Thank you for reminding me, though. I wanted to know, because I know of your past as with the cult and everything. When did comedy come into your life, and like, how do you know about the older ones? Because during that time, you weren't seeing them or hearing them, I assume, or
No.
were you?
No.
Okay,
So
we're getting serious for a moment.
the very first, I guess you could say, comedian that I was ever exposed to was a guy named Mark Lowry. And Mark Lowry used to travel around with a Christian singing group called the Gaithers, the Gaither Band. And so this was kind of pre going into the cult. My parents have been religious from day one. Joined the occult when I was about 8, got out when I was 19. So kind of around that time, there was a guy who traveled with them, and the Gaithers was kind of like a traveling evangelistic singing group type thing. And Mark Lowry would go with them and sing, but he was also a very funny guy. And he would tell what I would call religious comedy, stuff that would be very church appropriate, very church kind of thing. But he was also hyperactive. He was also had, quote unquote, like the ADD stuff as a kid and things like that. And so he would tell stories about, every day after I got my daily whipping, and people would tell me like, well, you didn't get a daily whipping or nothing, He's like, Mama would put me to bed and she'd be like, you're gonna do great things one day, but until you do, take this pill, So like little kind of like quips and jokes that are pretty harmless, but kind of even for a church crowd would kind of push a little bit of boundaries and stuff, right? And he put out an album that I listened to at a friend's house. It was called The Funny Stuff. And it was him cracking jokes, and he had a few songs and things like that. And, his whole thing was that, when he was born, the doctor, they knew he was going to be a problem because the doctor held him up and slapped him, and he reached around his mom and slapped the doctor back. And, so there was, kind of was my introduction to, you can kind of tell jokes and be funny. When I was 18, after I passed my GED, I did a quarter of college down in Hocking. Ended up in a car accident, had to drop out of college to pay for a car and things like that. While I was there, the roommate I had introduced me to Jeff Foxworthy. And I started stopping at a small gas station around the corner during my commute, which is about 3.5 hours from home to the college. I would come home on weekends. So I would stop and pay like $9 for a Jeff Foxworthy cassette tape that I would play in my car when I drove. And it was always, kind of started from there. And then when I moved out on my own, like I said, going through Best Buy is when I got that Chris Rock album. And at that point, I got into comedy, got a little obsessive about comedy, started talking to people and met other people who were really big in the comedy, and they started throwing out names. And eventually I got cable, started watching a lot of the Comedy Central comedians, and I just started, who's this, who's that, who's this? And then when I really just got that whole love and appreciation for it, I started going back and finding older and older comedians and finding, funnier and funnier ones. Now, Mark Lowry was kind of my introduction to stand-up, but very early on, because we didn't watch TV, we didn't really watch, we turned TV on during national disaster time. So the main points that I remember about the world growing up in the cult was Ruby Ridge, Waco, Oklahoma City, Desert Storm. So when your perception of the world is Ruby Ridge, Oklahoma City bombing, Waco and Desert Storm, you get a really bleak view of what the world is. Like, pretty much everyone's killing each other out there. Y'all are psychotic. This is why we're in the cult. This is why we do what we do, right?
Yeah.
We're the only ones that aren't trying to, fucking kill everyone else. Because that was pretty much, we didn't watch the TV shows of the 90s, and we didn't do any of that stuff. This is all stuff I caught up on later. But I was allowed to listen to old radio shows. So I would go to places like Half Price Books, which was a kind of a media outlet. And the things I got there was Hardy Boy books, because I was allowed to read those. The original old run, none of the newer stuff, but yeah, of the Hardy Boys. And I was allowed to buy old radio shows. So Jack Benny, Fibber McGee and Molly, Bob Hope, The Great Gildersleeve, all of these old shows really kind of sparked my interest to be funny. Sparked my interest to, because there is, the one thing about this list that people are always like, oh, they are funny, they're not funny. There's a value in laughter and bringing laughter to someone else's life. There's a very almost therapeutic ability to do that for people. And during that time of getting through certain aspects of the cult, it was those cassettes that would somewhat keep me grounded in certain aspects. Because I could always go, regardless of what happened at training centers or what happened in churches and things like that, when I finally got back to my house in my room with my little cassette player and those god-awful Sony headphones you plugged in with the orange, sponges on the end of them, I got back to the world of Jack Benny and the world of Fibber McGee and Molly. And that really, so I kind of had a variant history a little bit. I just had to fill in all the gaps of who was there between those times.
Gotcha.
And it was a lot of fun for me to go back and do that, though, man, because I found some people that I really liked. I found some people I really didn't like. I still remember like some of the shock I had listening to Dice Clay for the first time, and the shock that I had listening to Kennison for the first time. Like, oh my God, these guys are just talking about fucking pussy and shit. Like right out, like you can't just say that shit. Oh yeah, you can, And so there was a lot of cultural shock for me of trying to figure out like, because you can't just go out in public and tell Andrew Dice Clay, nursery rhymes, like you're gonna be looked at like weird as shit. Like I've had those experiences, like, oh my God, like why would you say that word in public? Dude, he said it in front of 40,000 people. Okay, it's okay in front of 40,000 people, but not at the mall. Okay, there was a big ass fucking learning curve on that. So there was quote unquote a dragon to slay there, to figure some of that out. And that's when I realized, I didn't take it that serious. If it's funny, it's going to be funny. And that's when I started listening to guys who, like John Panette and a few of these other guys who self-deprecated themselves, and it was funny, A lot of that was from points and times in their life that was painful. You know, no one likes getting made fun of. No one likes being that guy. You know, no one likes, you know, I was always kind of that bigger kid, the bigger guy. So I gravitated toward guys like Kevin Smith, toward guys like Mankind in wrestling, toward guys like John Pinette, you know. These are guys who didn't let their size and what people say kind of like dictate where they did or what they did. I mean, Mankind, you're in an industry where bodybuilding takes precedence. And he shined, beyond all shined, right? Like, when it comes to wrestling. Like, that was not your normal looking wrestler.
Right.
But everyone in wrestling is like, dude, Mick's crazy. Don't tempt him. Don't. He will make you do shit. No, I don't want to do tags. Why does Mick do tags? Like, why? And Mick had a lot of respect from guys. Now, they were like, I'm fucking pissed off. He's in the corner eating cheeseburgers. I'm over here lifting weights. I can't touch that shit. I got to look good going out. And this motherfucker just gets it handed to him. It's because of everything else he would do. Right. And because he found success in that. Yep. And so I gravitated toward that, which is why, you know, I have those bits about being in an occult, and I can make jokes about that now because I cope with it in those certain aspects. You know, I can live in a massive amount of depression, or I can try and spin that and do something with it. And yeah, so filling those gaps in, I realized, you know, there's a lot of guys who had similar situations, not the same, but here's how, you know, you can handle it, and you have to really figure out how to handle it, because God forbid you don't want to end up like Robin Williams. Yeah. The guy who couldn't overcome some of those demons in the end. And, you know, and the signs were there, we just didn't see them.
That is a somber ass note to end on.
Well, I mean,
but no, I'm glad.
I ask a somber ass question.
I wanted to know.
Excuse me.
So,
I mean, but I think every comedy bit has probably had some pain attached to it somewhere.
Yeah.
And every comedy bit is. I guess I could say the master class in comedy would be learning perspective. Just learning how to look at things. And it's really kind of a cool thing, because you can take anything and spin it. I mean, there's people out there who are like, well, you can't make a joke about this, and there's comedians going, yeah, watch, bet.
Yep.
You know, and is it going to be a dark joke? Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But you're still going to go like, oh, God, I can't believe it. No, okay, I don't want to laugh, but I kind of want to laugh. I mean, Tosh.
Daniel Tosh, somebody that wasn't mentioned. But
wasn't mentioned, but dude, that guy, he could figure out, it may not have been the best joke, but he could figure out how to turn rape, incest. I mean, shit you just don't talk about. Even something like pedophilia, he'll make it funny. It may not be in good taste, you know, but I mean, Robin Williams touched on it in a lot of his stuff too, even though he did it very mildly, where Daniel Tosh was very gritty.
Robin Williams wasn't on your list either.
No. That was such. That was a heartache. Yeah. Like in certain aspects for me.
I get it. I mean,
if it was top comedians in films, he would have been top three. Easy top three.
We're gonna have to do that at some point in time.
Because his stand up, it was good. Mm-hmm. I don't feel it was as iconic. Like Robin Williams iconically was known for his films, and especially like his start outs like Mork and Mindy and things like that. Like this is where Robin Williams is in his element. And is he funny behind a mic? Absolutely, 100%. Absolutely. I own comedy albums by him, but I'm not going to say that this is the guy I'm going back to day in and day out.
Gotcha.
I'll go back to his movies day in and day out, but not necessarily his stand-up day in and day out.
Adam Sandler's stand-up also, correct?
Yeah.
I feel the same about him then, because like his movies knock it out of the park. I can't even say if I've watched a stand-up special. So
I don't think I've ever seen a stand-up special by him.
But he is a stand-up.
I have owned stand-up albums.
Okay, so yeah.
But a lot of his stand-up albums were like Saturday Night Live skits. He always had people with him and doing things. Gotcha. A lot of his albums were skits and songs, which inadvertently, that's what he's great at.
Yeah.
But I can't really say that I've just sat and listened to him do jokes, standing up and doing jokes. You know, like I know some of his albums had like Rob Schneider on it and a few things like that. Now, Rob Schneider can stand behind a microphone, and like he still does actually. He goes around, sells out clubs, and does what he does. But I don't think I've just ever heard Adam Sandler just stand up and do jokes for any amount of time. Skits, sound effects with skits and stuff is always really good, but straight jokes, I'm not sure.
All right. Well,
So, good times though.
let us know what you think. Still, we got the Instagram. Go check us out there. It's _inappropriates_podcast. And there's other social media platforms, but go to that one because that's the one that I remember as of right now.
We'll have a list here in a couple episodes for you.
I also have it attached to the podcast link. So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever, it should be in the description. So you can go directly from there. But reach out to us. Let us know like what you think of the podcast. Give us your top 10 comedians if you want, something like that. I don't know. If there's something that you want us to do a top 10 on, we are open to suggestions, as this one was another one from a listener, Mark. He asked for top 10 comedians, and we gave it to him. So I hope you liked it, Mark. And yeah, that's all I got. You got anything?
No, just it's not a requirement to interact with the show. We always want to hear what people think. Yeah. Obviously, I popped open on Instagram, and there was surprisingly 20 followers on there already. So if any of you guys are listening, like there's always topics and ideas that we need to come up with, because we usually record these a couple episodes at a time. And eventually we're going to start running out of ideas. So the more brains we have coming into this, if there's something you want to hear us talk about or put a spin on, throw it in the comments. I don't think that there's really a topic we're not going to cover at this point. I mean, I'm sure there probably will be something at some point in time that comes up that we'll be like, I'm just not touching that particular topic. But I really don't foresee anything that could come out to be too incredibly terrible, unless you want my top 10 list of pedophiles that are being caught. I'm like, nah, I'm good. I'm not going to cover that.
Yeah.
But I mean, pretty much nothing's off limits on these top 10s. No Diddy, but I mean.
If you do reach out to us on Instagram, know that it's my wife that runs the social medias. Me and Matthew don't have time for that shit. And she doesn't get paid. Well, I give her the D. But anyways, be nice is all I'm saying. Be nice to my wife if you message us. Don't think it's us that you're messaging, please. But we'll see it, but she's the one running it.
Or if it does, we'll know about it. She'll be like, I'm not answering that fucker. And
Yeah,
I'll be like, fine, I'll log on there and do something.
There you go.
But yeah, I mean, she can take a joke to an extent, but let's not make Nate's home life any worse than it needs to be.
Peace.
Have a week.
All right, folks, so until next time, I'm Matthew,
I'm Nathan.
and we're here reminding you to be yourself, because everyone else is taken.